And I know why. As a former Secretary of State for the great state of California, now serving in the Senate, I'm thrilled to welcome state and local elections officials to testify before us today. I think it's important for this body to hear from the folks on the ground, the folks that do this day in and day out, to inform our positions and decision making and investments. And it's truer now than ever before because we know the impact that the big lie has had through the sowing of disinformation throughout about our elections in the minds of a lot of the American people. And it's not with abstract consequences, just very real consequences. Even in the state of California, where Shasta County has chosen to stop using their Dominion voting system, and I should underscore, a state-tested and certified voting system, putting itself in a position with no system or plan in place with elections less than a year away, because it's not about next November, it's about the primaries in 2024. So there's real dangers here to all of this. I know Chairwoman Klobuchar mentioned earlier her concern about election workers and the threats that they're under on an increasing basis. Again, a consequence of the big lie. When 1 in 6 election workers sharing that they've faced threats and harassment since the 2020 election, resulting in 1 in 3 election workers leaving their positions, it's not just a matter of capacity that's being lost as a result, but the tremendous talent and experience that's lost, while threats and challenges to our elections are only on the increase. My first question is for Secretary Touts Oliver. Good to see you again. Can you just share what your experiences in New Mexico has been in this regard? Any, aside from stats, any tangible examples of the threats, the harassment from your office to the locals, and the loss of election workers and what that means?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Senator from my native state of California. It's very good to see you again. And I did already allude to a little bit of this in some earlier comments, so forgive me for repeating myself a little bit. But so I think the challenges are twofold in terms of the demands and the challenges in retaining, and I really want to emphasize that because our poll, particularly down at the local level, our poll workers, the ones who come year in and year out, who have that breadth of experience and knowledge, but also our local election officials, right? In my state, county clerks, their staff, right? Having folks who know and understand the election process, who are educated, efficient, good at their jobs, keeping those professionals in place is really important. And so when they experience harassment and threats, and we do lose, and we have in my state, just as we've seen across the country, we have lost a lot of these experienced folks as a result of this. It is a challenge. So I think that the challenge is twofold. I think first and foremost, there's sort of the obvious, threats of violence and just outright harassment. I mean, I've heard reports from poll officials who say they were, followed home, folks who are kind of lingering outside of a polling place and waiting for them to close down and kind of, following them home to see where they live, ostensibly to, I don't know, see if they brought a ballot with them or something like that from a polling place. But also, one of the bigger challenges we're dealing with is that the misinformation is creating sort of, tens of thousands of what I would call, individual self-described detectives who are flooding even our smallest offices with information requests, and they're so overwhelming that they don't have the time they need to do their jobs, right? So those are some of the challenges.
These are, great examples which, from what I hear colleagues in other states, more contentious states, particularly the once every 4-year states, it gets even more intense. I'll try to make another couple of questions on the shorter side with my time left. But yes, no question for Mr. Evan. Do you believe your team and the local leaders that you work with are prepared for the challenges that the big lie is going to cause them in next year's election? Yes or no, or a very brief answer?
Well, our elections officials across the state are county clerks. Our elections are conducted by county clerks across our 93 counties and election commissioners in our larger counties. And they are prepared. We support them from the Secretary of State's office in our elections division. We support them with information. We support them.
Are we going to be ready next year?
We're ready.
Any concern about being ready next year or not?
We don't have concerns about being ready.
Okay.
We've responded to questions and concerns. You can see on the Secretary of State's website, the Nebraska Secretary of State's website, we have a presentation called Fake versus Fact, and in that we've responded to a number of the concerns that have been raised. We lay out what we've found to be the case, and we let the voters decide for themselves what they think.
All right. I may follow up with some of you after the hearing with some more specific questions. But last one is more on the technical side. You know, for a lot of people across the country, increasingly getting to the polls on a single particular day between a certain time and a certain time to cast your ballot is not always the most convenient, particularly with changing rules. We know that primarily in the West, from Utah, Colorado, Oregon, California as well, we've expanded greatly the option of voting by mail, which has proven to be very safe, very secure, in addition to be very convenient. Question for Mr. Bowens. Do you think we would benefit from a basic federal standard that would allow all voters that are eligible to vote, you know, we're talking about eligible voters here, to be able to exercise a vote by mail option?
So thank you, Senator. So I can speak to Durham County, North Carolina, and what works there. Over the past three federal general elections, approximately 63% of our voters have participated early. Over the same three federal general elections, we've received over 82,000 civilian, military, and overseas absentee by mail requests, no excuse in North Carolina. 72% of those that were returned were accepted and counted. So I believe that North Carolina has established very good standards with respect to voting in general, but certainly early voting, which begins 17 days or the third Thursday prior to each election. And I believe the first in the country to distribute absentee by mail ballots beginning 60 days prior to federal general elections. So to the extent that standards would comply with what North Carolina does, which I think is a very good model, I would agree with that.
Thank you very much. I'm a big believer, just so you know, and again, proven to be safe, secure, and very convenient for folks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Nebraska kind of eased into voting by mail. We started in, I think it was 2005, a bill passed in the legislature when I was there that in reaction to the